Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's journal for all seasons. I'm going to do another stitch piece today, but before I get into that I just want to tell you that I have counted how many pages I've got left. Sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. I just remembered it was bin day and I had to run to put the bins out in the rain. Anyway, I've done it. Recycling day. Yeah, I've had a count up, and because I want to save a week or two at the end of the year for something else, I personally have only got 6 Mondays left for this journal, and I had way more than that many pages. So here I actually tore out 2 pages that I had. So I had this flimsy bit of tea-dyed graph paper and this piece of it was just ordinary sketchbook paper. So obviously I'm not going to waste those, they'll go back in my paper drawer. But I just tore them, leaving maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch strip, and then I just taped them down to this page. I couldn't tear them right out obviously, or their pair the other side would have come out because of the way it's bound. So that's what I did. So then I've got this lovely brown bit of packaging paper, some lovely mark on it. I think that's wax or something. I've used it for waxing, you know, as a surface. And then as I go through, I've got this that I've been moaning about all year, this artist canvas. I might take that out actually. Yeah, and that I could take out both sides, probably if I'm careful, if I maybe put something under and cut it. Anyway, that's for another time. So I've got this spread. Now before I go any further, oh, I haven't looked that up. I made 2 mistakes last week. So erratum, I think they call that. Number 1, and silly me, a haiku format is 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, not 5, 5, 7. I don't know what I was thinking. Apparently I wasn't thinking. Like I told you, I have done a project where I did 1 a day for 100 days, so you think I would have learnt, but anyway. But I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm just going to leave it as a short rhyme, not even a rhyme, a verse or whatever. And it's just not a haiku, just so you know. And the other thing is, Phil Collins did actually sing the song True Colours, but he didn't write it. I meant to double check. Someone in the comments told me who wrote it. I think it was Billy Steinberg, someone like that. Anyway, so those are my 2 corrections from last week. So not a haiku, and Phil Collins didn't write True Colours, although he did sing it. So this week I'm going to do a haiku and see if I can get it right. But before I do that, I will show you my pieces of cloth I've got. So I've got a piece of, this is actually my old gardening pinny that fell apart. I've been using bits of it here and there. It was a vintage linen nightie that I modified and eco-printed, and you know, but I wore it in France for, well, before that actually, it was my workshop pinny. In England I wore it while teaching workshops, and then I wore it in France as a gardening pinny. Anyway, it finally disintegrated and now it's having new life in little art projects. And this is a piece of the linen sheet that I walnut dyed, that I'm making my big piece with the blanket stitching on, which I've shown you somewhere, I think. But anyway, that's the offcut of that. It's a piece of walnut dyed linen, is all you really needed to know. But I wanted something brown to represent the earth, and the backing really is just because I like the contrast when I put it on this brown page, but also because, as always, I like to stitch through 2 layers. It's just, I find it nicer, and you know. So I'm going to do the invisible baste, and I'm going to just do, I think, a line through the middle and then maybe go around the edge. Maybe I should put some pins because the linen's a bit shifty. I don't know if I'm going to only do stitching entries for the rest of the year, we'll see, but I must say I'm enjoying stitch journaling for now. And I think many of you like it too. Although I know many of you also like the mixed media, but right, that'll do, pig. So invisible baste. I've had quite a few new subscribers recently. Welcome if you're new. And a couple of people have asked in the comment, first of all, make a big enough knot. I'm just going to go into this under linen, which is slightly tighter weave, and just do a little back stitch to secure my thread. Yeah, so a few people, I've referred to invisible baste. I refer to it, I think, in nearly every stitching video, but I don't always show it. and there are some new people here. It's a technique I learnt from Jude Hill, who is known as Spirit Cloth, and I have linked her video in a couple of comments in response to people. She's got a video only on the invisible baste. So if you want to watch that, if you look up Jude Hill invisible baste, you'll find it. But the principle is you take a tiny back stitch on the front. Now that can be 2 or 3 threads of the cloth. The size will vary on the weave of the cloth. This cloth is very loose weave, so I'm going to take about 1/8 of an inch probably in order to catch a couple of the threads. And then you come forward on the back by a goodly amount, whatever your needle wants to do. Mine's usually about 3/4 of an inch. And then again, tiny back stitch and then forwards. And that's the invisible baste, as simple as that. And it has many advantages. One is that it is, if you use a matching thread, as the name suggests, virtually invisible on the front. So you leave it in, you don't have to take it out like normal basting, which means you don't have that kind of slightly soul destroying thing of having to do work and then undo it. But also you don't have big basting stitches on the front, which will maybe get the thread caught in of your fancy stitching, and they might interfere with the look of your work while you're working. I just don't like to see them. So yeah, I just love it. I use it all the time, as if you've been here a while you will know. And I always thank Jude for bringing it to my attention. It actually is a stitch from garment making that's been around since medieval times, and it was known as the prick stitch, and it was used for, and is still used in hand tailoring, to attach sort of things like attaching linings to the insides of, you know, waistcoats or jackets or whatever, so that it would be invisible. But it's Jude who's brought it to the textile art world, I do believe, or the, you know, the hand stitching world, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to stitch around till this thread runs out and then call it good enough, because I'm in that kind of mood. It's Monday morning, it's raining, it's quite windy and rainy in the night, and now it's just plain raining. It's quite early, I think that just chimed 8:30. I've been up since maybe 6. I have not taken Stella out yet because the rain was really bad, and the forecast is that it will lighten up later, so we might as well wait a bit. So I thought I'd get this done first, as it's Monday. So the clocks have now gone back. It has to be up for you by 3 p.m. and obviously it takes a little time after I've filmed to edit and upload and, you know, do all the YouTubey stuff to it. That's going to run out now, but I'm just going to finish that off, and it's good enough to hold it. So my thought for this week, I'm still with the leaves. My thoughts are still with the fallen leaves. So I thought what I would do, which kind of seemed appropriate if you think about it, is some seed stitch, but in a certain way. Now the leaves that are falling are dead, in inverted commas, but they are feeding the ground. They are helping create the humus, the soil, the growing medium for all the new life that's coming from the seeds that the trees have dropped. So it's just all part of that cycle of nature. So I just kind of I thought if I do the leaves as seed stitch, when you look at them fallen on the ground all mixed together, they're all, you know, this way and that and multi-layered, and so I was thinking of kind of an abstract way to represent that. So I've picked out some red thread just out of my tangly orts. Orts, by the way, is said to stand for odd random threads or old random threads. It's actually a Germanic word that comes from a long time ago. I can't exactly remember when, but it referred to food scraps originally, and how it's come to mean thread ends, I don't know, but that's why I call it my tangly orts nest. Get asked that quite a few times as well. So I've been in there and I've pulled out some red and some gold and some sort of russet brown, and I'm just going to come up somewhere, probably in the middle apparently, and I'm going to do quite big seed stitching. Now you can either do seed stitching like I did there, so you take a seed stitching is basically just random individual stitches going every which way over the surface of the cloth, And so you can either do it stab stitch, which is what I do if I want them quite small and neat, or you can also just take the stitch and then decide where you want to come up for the next one and do that in one movement. You know, it depends. With these bigger ones, I seem to be liking doing it like this. But just pay attention when you're stitching as to how it's making you feel. Are you enjoying it? Is it comfortable? Are they comfortable movements for your hands to make? Or that kind of thing. And if it isn't, change something. I've had some questions recently talking about hands of people who have said that they've got issues with their hands and did I have any advice. Well, I'm lucky that my hands are still, touch wood, relatively nimble. I do sometimes in damp weather have a little bit of the beginnings of something down the heel of my left hand. There is a lot of arthritis going back through my mother's line through the family and in the hands. So I do suspect I will at one point have to deal with that. But at the moment I'm okay. Anyway, but if you're not, obviously, well, number one, I'm not a medical person, but so I you know, so I can only give you kind of advice that I have thought of myself. And the other thing is your hand issues will be as varied as you are, but I think the basic principles are try not to have tension when you're stitching. Don't grip, especially if you're new. If we're new to things, then we tend to be tense about them because we're, you know, worried either consciously or subconsciously that we're going to make a mistake or something like that. So when you're worried or anxious about something, you tighten up. So you might be clutching your cloth and clutching your needle. So just try and be aware of that, and if you find that you are, just pause for a minute and relax your hands, do some of this, relax your shoulders and your arms, because although you're working with your hands, the movement goes right up through your body, your neck and everything. Make sure you're sitting somewhere comfortable, whatever that means for you, whether that's in a chair or at a table or, you know, anywhere else, and make sure that the shape of your whole body, your hands, your wrists going up into your arms and your shoulders is also comfortable. So that might mean that you have to put something on your lap like a cushion and then a tray to stitch on or whatever. You might have to experiment to find what works best for you. And then beyond that, I would say when you've done all that, choose only soft cloth. That is so important. Don't, you can if you want to. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. But what I'm saying is if you have a densely woven cloth or something that's really hard to stitch through and you're going like this, when you're forcing the needle through, all the tension will then run up your hands, into your wrists, up your arms, into your shoulders, everywhere, you know. So that is why I always talk about using soft cloth, not only because it's tactile and beautiful and it has history to it and everything, but also because it's a pleasure to stitch. I mean, you see how my needle is just going through these two little old scraps of linen with no effort whatsoever. And that's what you want. It's important. We're doing this for the love of it, and there's no point in struggling with, you know, unpleasant to stitch cloth. If you have unpleasant to stitch cloths, you know, if you're new to this, and I mean, before, when I was a so-called normal quilter, I had a lot of unpleasant to hand stitch cloths because I stitched by machine, and I gifted a lot of that when I shifted back over to hand stitching to people that could make use of them. And some I kept, and then I used them for, like, I made the patchwork curtain that's hanging up my door there to use up some of it, and I did that on the sewing machine, you know. So if you're new to this and you've got new cloth and you want to transition to thrifted cloth, just do it slowly. Some new cloths will be softer, so I would say just go through what you've got and select the softer pieces, launder them if you haven't yet, you know, if they're new. If you wash them and get all the sizing out, that can soften them up, and then just try them with an empty needle. and anything that's resistant, put it aside for another project, or you know, rehome it in some way to someone who can use it. The other thing I would say, I'm just going to carry on and thread. So I've done that until the thread ran out, and now I'm going to go for this russety bit. That's one long bit. I'm going to double it up. And the next thing I would say to do is, while you're stitching, be aware of your body. I mean, that's part of the mindfulness. It's not only being mindful of the cloth and the thread and the stitching. It's being mindful of how it makes you feel, both physically and emotionally. So just pay attention to your body and stop before the pain gets too bad. I know I have friends who have had operations on their hands and who still stitch, and they can stitch a little bit and then they have to go and do something else. And that, unfortunately, is just what you have to do, because I should say it to myself when I'm doing something like gardening, because I have to learn these days, now that I'm the grand old age of 60, that I can't dig all day like I used to. Well, I can, but then I'm wiped out for 3 days afterwards. So, you know, so it's the same with stitching, just short sessions and then go and do something else in between. You know, you could do a bit of stitching and then you could go and sort through your cloths like I just suggested to find the nicer to stitch ones, or assemble cloths for another project, or go and do some collage where you're pinning, or, you know, just do something different. What I do as well, but I'm going to just tell you what I'm going to stitch next so I can stitch and talk. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with my russet, but I'm going to, some stitches will fall in the spaces, but I'm going to deliberately overlap some over the red that's there already. So the same thing again, but just building up the layers of stitching as if the layers of leaves on the woodland floor. I'm just going wherever the needle takes me, really. Yeah, the other thing is I also knit and crochet, and my hand pain comes up if I spend a long time knitting on little thin needles. Probably because they're thin, you have to grip harder. You have to close your hand more. Stells! What was I saying? It was just a neighbour. Yes, I also knit and crochet. Yeah, I was talking about knitting. Yeah, because I think when I'm, like, if I'm knitting socks, I knit them in the round on circular needles. I mean, I can knit for a good couple of hours, but after a while I feel my left hand does cramp up a little bit. So I stop knitting and I go and stitch or I crochet. And I find for me personally, if my hands are tensing up, something about the action of crocheting eases it. Of course, you could just sit and do nothing, but I find that very difficult and frustrating. I don't often just sit and, well, when I say do nothing, if I'm watching something, or, you know, something on YouTube or a film or something like that, or listening to a podcast or an audiobook, I like to be doing something at the same time. I'm sure many of you are the same. I don't like to just sit all the time. Sometimes I do just sit, but anyway, Catherine, get on with the point you're making. So it's for doing nothing for me is often not an option. So what I do instead is I switch to one of my other crafts. So I have my stitching, my knitting, my crocheting. I also sketch and do a bit of mixed media, as you know. But those 3 fibre crafts that I do. So if I'm cramping up with the knitting, I'll go and do some crocheting. And for me, I find something about the action of crocheting actually is like yoga for my hands. So maybe you can find something similar. It might not be crochet for you because, like I said, we're all different and our hand issues are different. But yeah, so that's all I've got to offer, really. But yeah, to recap, the main things for me are being comfortable, choosing your materials so that they help you rather than fight with you, and just paying attention to the signs that your hands are getting achy and tired. And if you have serious issues with your hands, then I hope you're under the guidance of a medical practitioner as well. And I do think it is worth mentioning to them that you're a stitcher or whatever, because I would hope these days that medical professionals are aware of you know, the kind of holistic aspect to care, and that they might have some advice in terms of you know, if you're having physio or that kind of treatment, I think it's important that they know what you do. I mean, a good person will have asked you. I know that I did have some hip problems years ago, some pain in my left hip, and this was many years ago, and I went to my GP, who was very good, and she sent me to a physio, and the physio, the first thing she did was ask me about my day, you know, what I did in a normal day. And at that time I was making art quilts, and I was standing at my big cutting table and doing the assembling and whatever, and then I was going and sitting at my sewing machine, but maybe only for 10 minutes or so at a time to do a bit of sewing, and then I was standing up again to carry on with the, you know, that's how I worked, a bit more fabric, a bit more rearranging, whatever, a few more stitches up and down. And as I described this to her, she asked me to show her sitting at a table and chair how I sat at my sewing machine. So I sort of mimed what I did, and what I did was slide in to the chair, not sit down comfortably straight on and all that, because I knew I was only there for 5 or 10 minutes. My foot pedal had invariably crept away, I'm sure you know if you're a machine stitcher, so you'd reach for it, and she straight away saw the problem with my hip. So she gave me some exercises to do. And on the whole, it was fine. I say on the whole, I used to get a bit of pain riding my horse sometimes for a long period of time. But yeah, but you know, so it's what you do is important. I mean, I was lucky that I had a very good GP and then a very good physio, but you got to the root of the problem pretty quickly. But yeah, just if you have a medical care professional and you haven't mentioned to them that you're a stitcher or a crafter, then maybe it's just worth mentioning it, saying, because they need to know what you're doing with your hands all day. It has a bearing on your treatment. So that, I mean, that's maybe obvious, but it's maybe not, so that's why I mention it. So again, with this lovely gold, I'm just going over the top every which way, as if these are fallen leaves on the woodland floor. And you can go on and on with this as long as you like. You could cover the whole surface so that it almost looks like thread painting. This bit of orange yellow has nearly run out. Mine are all clustered up in this little area, but that's okay. I might just find a couple of other colours because I still find it a bit sparse. I'll squeeze one more thread out of that. Yeah, but what I said about the nature of the cloth is more important than you might think. Because you might think, oh, if I want to hand stitch this batik, how much strain can it cause me? It's only a bit of cloth. I just picked batik because they're notoriously high thread count. But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how much strain that can have just from doing that one little thing here, like gripping your needle tightly, and how that can go right up into other parts of your body and cause referred pain all over the place. I've got 3 strands of this lovely old gold colour, so I've taken it down to 2 again. I'm just remembering back to the early days as I edited out that it took me a little minute to thread my needle. Only, you know, seconds, but when I first started making these videos I didn't know how to edit. So and then I learnt how to edit, and then a few people said they didn't like me editing, so I stopped editing. And now I edit again because I think it's, you know, it's the thing to do, and it's helpful when I'm doing multiple things at the same time. You know, I can't share the whole process real time because it would be literally hours. So again, I'm just doing the same. I seem to have gone on to stabs. Oh, look what I've done. Now, someone posted in the Facebook group the other day a picture of them having done that, and I did say in the comments, yes, me too. There we go, proof. But it's so close to the edge, I'm just going to do that. I once was doing some applique. It was actually a Baltimore album. It was going to be a quilt I never made it to, I never finished it. It was a block a month thing. I made a few. I made 6, I think. My mother's got them as cushions. I made them into cushion covers. But I was working on a block. It was needle turn applique, and I was stitching away for the best part of an evening, and I'd stitched it to my skirt. And I know many of you have done that as well. I'd had to get all the stitching out. So yeah, fallen leaves. Yeah, it's been very windy and rain. Well, actually Saturday was a lovely day, and I did go on a little trip on Saturday. Saturday, and I did video it for you. So that will be this Friday's Park Home Life. But then yesterday, Sunday, was rainy, and today is rainy. I think we've got a few days of rain coming. But that's okay, that is the season. I will just mention again Midsummer Quilting in case you haven't heard while I'm sitting here stitching. Midsummer Quilting is a shop, a fabric shop and workshops space in Chilcompton, or near Chilcompton. I will link their website, and they have been going for 21 years this year, and I used to teach there, and I might well be teaching there again. I used to teach textile art, machine work back in the day, you know, years and years ago, before I went to France. And they were very supportive of me early on in my teaching career. They're lovely people. Anyway, they're having an exhibition of 21 former tutors' work, which opens on November the 14th and runs until the 22nd of December. Opening times vary. Do check their website. But I've got 4 pieces. I've been invited, and I've got 4 pieces in there, one of which is my dad's quilt. Another one is a big hand-stitched art quilt that I made a few years ago called Everything is Connected to Everything Else. And I kind of think it's my best work, that particular one. And then there's a couple of other pieces. One is the dark and light circles that I did with you here. And then there's another one. So if you'd like to go along and see that, there's lots of other people's work there. It'll be varied, and I'm very honoured to be part of such a talented group of stitchers. So yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yes, so I'm visiting next Wednesday the, I've written on this bit of paper, Wednesday the 19th of November. I'll be there in the morning with Maz, who's visiting from Australia, one of our lovely community. And then on Saturday the 6th and the 13th of December, those 2 mornings, I'm going to go and sit there for the morning and stitch, because I just like to go and chat to people. So if you're coming on any of those days, it'll be nice to see you. And you see that how nicely these stitches build up when you keep overlapping them. And you can just keep going until you're happy with it. I think I'm kind of at the point where I am, really. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop there, but obviously you can feel free to go on and do as much as you like. Sorry, I just got something caught in the back of my throat, and I just had a slight choking fit. I think I've recovered. I will edit that out, you don't want to hear that. So now to attach it to my page and write my haiku there. I just needed to explain why my voice had gone croaky. Oh dear. I think I'll use this, but I'm going to double it up because I don't really want to cover my thread, so I'm going to do that thing where you do this and see if it works. It's quite strong, this parcel tape. Put it there. If it doesn't work, I can always have a plan B. So it's even sticking to my fingers. There we go. That seems good enough. My haiku. So I've got my lovely Uniball pen that I like to write with. So this is actually a haiku this time. So there we go. That is my haiku. Scattered fallen leaves cover the ground like kisses, adoring the earth. And that's my little scattered running, sorry, what do you call them? Seed stitches. So I hope you enjoy playing with that, and obviously of course I'm using it here in my journal, but you can use it in your stitching work anywhere where you want to put some texture. You could use the same colour thread and just keep building up, or you could use excuse me, different weights of thread. That would also be interesting, you know, from a thick like a cotton pearl right down to a single strand of embroidery floss. Or you could start with all 6 strands of floss and gradually work your way down so you're only stitching with 1 strand and create a really dense textured pattern. Variegated threads, you know, and you can play with that to your heart's content. So I hope you enjoy that, and thank you so much as always for watching, and I'll see you on Wednesday for the part 2, the first part of the fancy stitching on this month's Coverlet of Comfort, and then on Friday, like I said, there's a little special trip out video for you. And the clock's going to chime. So lots and lots of love and kisses. Take care of yourselves, and I love you lots. Bye bye. Kisses. Bye bye.